Okay, hello everyone and welcome back to Big Dan's Airgun Reviews. Well, today we're sort of lying with the title there. This isn't a review as such. Today's more of like a scientific episode, but we're going to be using hillbilly science, not the boring mathematical science. What we're doing today is we're going to look at hold sensitivity when it comes to shooting a recoil operated air rifle. Or not recoil operated, that means sort of like a semi-automatic rimfire, but an air rifle that recoils, we'll put it that way. This is why we should use a script, because God knows what comes out of my mouth. What happens with an air gun which recoils is that a lot of people obviously know this, skip it on if this is rambling too much, but for those who aren't sure what we're talking about, with an air rifle that recoils, what happens is the recoil actually sets in through the shot cycle before the pellet has left the barrel. Now, depending on how you hold your rifle, some say that you can actually make the recoil or the shot cycle harsher than compared to other, say, potentially softer ways of holding the rifle. A very popular hold for spring guns and such is the artillery hold, and a lot of people like doing this with PCPs as well. And that is when you have the rifle pushed into your shoulder, but you lead the rifle with your leading hand is almost open palm. It's basically, it's resting there. There's very little that's controlling the front end of the gun. So what I thought we would do today, we'll put this the artillery hold and other holds to the test with our little XS19. Now this is the same XS19 that we put up against the HW80, so we know what the rifle can do roughly out the box. You'll also notice that we have already upgraded the trigger. That is the rather lovely Welsh Willy trigger unit on top of there. And let's put a target up, say 25 yards, and as you can see our new studio, I thought we'd get some fresh air and hopefully some sunlight today, because I've looked at my videos back after they've been edited and I am the whitest person I've ever seen. It's almost depressing. So we're going to see if I can catch some sunshine and see if we can do some science. So we're going to set the target up at 25 yards, and what we're going to do is we're going to use different holds for each target that we put up. Now how we're going to do this is we're going to use it on a 1 to 10 scale. So 1 being with very little grip, so an artillery hold will say we'll have 1 in the leading hand and say something like a 3 in the shoulder, and have something like a real grip it and rip it sort of say stance, shall we say, where you've got the rifle, you're gripping it as hard as you can pretty much in the leading hand, and you've got that thing really pushed into the shoulder. So we're going to be doing it sort of like that, and we'll let you know just how we're going to be holding the rifle for the results, what we get, sort of thing, so you know exactly what has done what group. And I think it could be quite interesting. Obviously it's not, like we said, something like a review. I'm sorry if you was looking forward to one of those, but it might be quite interesting to do that with a very, very popular rifle, and just to see how the holds and such affect the gun, and just see what sort of results we end up getting depending on how the gun is held. So with that out of the way, let's get the target set up at 25 yards, and yeah, let's see what sort of hillbilly science we can do today. So let's get the target up and have some fun. Okay then, so first hold we're going to do is, as mentioned, we're going to do the artillery hold, and we're going to make this one as light as physically possible. Like we said before, we're doing it on a scale of 1 to 10 when it comes to really how you grip this thing, to sort of give a rough idea as to how I'm sort of shouldering it. So we're going to go a 1 for 1 on this one, as light as I physically can. So we're going to be open palm, and it is literally just resting into my shoulder now. I mean, you can wiggle it, sort of thing. So the rifle is really going to be doing exactly what it wants. Now this will be a pretty good test, because as a lot of people say, you've got to let the rifle do its own thing, or let it recoil. So this is about it doing its own thing as much as you can possibly get. So let's step onto the range, and let's see what a 1 for 1 artillery hold can do. Okay then, so that's our artillery hold testing done, and there's some pretty interesting results actually. We'll start off, this is the first group that we did. Hopefully we'll put on screen so as you can see just a recap what sort of hold we was doing. This is what we're calling a 1-to-1. Obviously it's a artillery hold, so the palm has to be open anyway, so obviously there's not really any major way you can grip tighter on what's an open hold, so the leading hand was always on the one tightness setting, shall we say, for each and every one of these groups. Now this was 1-to-1, so we had it very lightly in the shoulder, and you can see it sort of splayed them all over the place. You've got a hell of a vertical spread on the go, and there's not really a group there if we're being honest. Now when I was shooting this, I knew there was going to be some sort of vertical spread, because when you don't put any pressure on these, I know usually they do say grip the gun as lightly as possible, don't do that with an XS19, not this one anyway, because with this you can see it was just, that muzzle was flipping all over the place. It was just throwing the pellets wherever it wanted them to go. The next one was a lot better though. This was with a tightness or a sort of grip in the shoulder of a 5 out of 10 sort of ranking. With this, and obviously as we said, leading hand artillery hold, wide open, just open palm. With this, things got tighter. You've actually got a bit of a group there. You can see the 4 pellets there. You've got 2 through the same hole on the second to highest little holes you can see there. So you've got 4 there in what would be a 20 pence group. Not 5 pence, but 20 pence. But you've still got one being thrown down low and left, and another one up way high. It's a lot better. You can see things got tighter. That extra firmness into the shoulder definitely helped things. When I say a 5 out of 10, say tightness or grip into the shoulder, by that, if I can put that into words how that feels, it's essentially, it feels comfortable. It's not light, but it's not tight, if that makes any sense. It's just a comfortable, natural shoulder sort of thing. With our next group, this is obviously, as we said, 1 up front, but into the shoulder, 10. So I'm really pulling this into the shoulder. The interesting thing is the cluster, instead of going mainly vertical spread, is now just being placed to the right, which is a little bit strange. So it seems to have deleted all of the vertical movement, or some of the vertical movement, and it's displaced it by throwing the barrel off to the right, it would seem, for that split second. So it's interesting findings. Now one thing I will say about this is obviously every rifle is going to behave differently. You might even find XS19s out there that recoil differently. This is just simply a fun little video, a little exercise sort of thing to test some of the legends of air gunning, shall we say, like light hold, artillery hold and all that sort of thing. I can safely say with this, at the moment anyway, an artillery hold is not the way to go. If you want to see what this little gun can do, just how accurate it is, I don't mean to plug one of my own videos, skip to the end, go to our HW80 versus XS19 video, and that was with the standard trigger as well, and see just what these little guns can do when shot off of a rest. They are bloody accurate little guns, but not with the artillery hold it seems. So next up we're going to do a standard airgun hold, and I'm going to pop up on camera just for a few seconds just to show you what we mean. So our artillery hold gave us not the results we probably would have been expecting actually. It was a little bit up and down and then off to the right. So this time we're just going to do a standard air gun or rifle hold, and that is literally the hold you do. If there's a rifle in the rack you want to look at, you don't necessarily always go like that. You just give it a nice comfortable, just traditional hold like this, and you can see here you've got the thumb poking through. It's resting somewhat in the palm, and the fingers, if you can see that, will pretty much just be wrapped around like this. Not tightly wrapped to begin with, that'll be a bit later on when we do a bit more testing, but to start with we're going to be doing it, if you remember our point system, we're going to have 1 on the tightness scale back here and a 1 up front as well. So it's basically loosey-goosey back here and still loosey-goosey, you can see there up front, but there's still got that thumb wrapped around there and such, so it is still different to the artillery hold. After that we'll move to a 5 tightness on the rear here, so it's a little bit more pulled into the shoulder, and leave it at 1 up front, because as you can see there were some pretty drastic differences simply changing say the rear tightness and such. But the thing where things might get quite interesting is with this hold we can tighten it up on the front as well. So we'll do 5 and 1, and after this we'll go 5 and 5, so we're holding it a bit more securely in the leading hand like that. After that obviously we then move on to the 10, so we'll have it really pulled in back here but leave it on 5 up front, so as it's pulled in securely into the shoulder, but it's still reasonably, not fully loose, but it's about average pull on the front here. After that we'll go 10 and 10, where you can see I'm really pulling this thing in. You never know, it might work. I don't know if anyone's really tried that yet. They probably have, and well, probably shot the neighbour, but at the same time we'll have it like this, 10 and 10, so you can really see I'm gripping it and ripping it, and just to see, for a bit of fun and science, like I said, hillbilly science, see what it can do. So yeah, let's do that for our next hold and see how it compares to the artillery hold. Now one thing I will say is This is obviously being done unrested. There's not a lot of point doing this with rest because, well, it cheats the entire objective, really. If you do want to see what these guns can do, just to show this isn't just a naturally shotgunning rifle, I don't mean to plug one of my own videos, but skip to near the end of our HW80 versus XS19 review, and that was with the standard mediocre at best trigger, and you'll see exactly what this little gun's capable of. Again, we're shooting the same distance, 25 yards, and with that I think we had two little flyers, but it was a 5 group at 25 yards. So this is completely unrested, and again, like we said, it's an accurate little gun. Today though, it's all me, so oh, no pressure, eh? But yeah, let's move on to our standard grip and see what it can do compared to the artillery hold. See what we can do. Okay then, so results, and I think we had some surprises actually. Most people's money probably would have been on the artillery hold for this to, well, win the day, shall we say, and although it grouped all right, I'll put it that way, it was not the best. That being said, one thing that I will say about this is obviously to keep the video as sensibly timed as possible, we've sort of had to not be perhaps as thorough as we'd like to be. This was in, say, increments of, like we said, 5 per each test that we did. So like 1 up front, like we said, ultra light, 5 medium, average, sort of natural hold, 10 really pulling it in. So maybe the artillery hold, if we fine-tuned it just a little bit more when it comes to how well it was in the shoulder, something like that, maybe calm it down a little bit, because the 5 gave us really good results, like natural pull into the shoulder. Maybe if we loosened it up a little bit, maybe added a little bit more, it might bring it in really nice and tight. But for me, it just wasn't really working today. Artillery hold was throwing the muzzle on this pretty much skyward with each shot, and you can see here when we really pulled it into the shoulder, it wasn't quite so vertically all over the place, although it is definitely still a bit like that, as you can clearly see, but it more pushed it over to the right, which is quite interesting, I found. Now, the best holds we had was with the standard hold, which I'm actually quite proud about, because it's far more comfortable to me anyway than the artillery hold. I've never really, I've done the artillery hold, but it's not my favourite hold. I'd rather just shoot it normally, and I'm so glad that the normal hold is actually won today. But as you can see here, first group we had 4 in that little hold there, and this is 1 for 1, so next to nothing up front and nothing on the back, neither. So you can see here we've got 1 shot off to the left, 1 off to the right, but we've got 4 shots and a really lovely small little cluster in there then. That straight away was much better than what we got with the artillery hold. Moving further along, and this was the group of the day, we've got all 6 in a really nice cluster down there. I don't have a 5p to test it, but I can personally guarantee that's going to be a 5p group or sub 5p. That was pretty damn good, it must be said. Moving on, we then went to, this is 5 and 5, so we're putting sort of average grip up front, definitely not letting go of the thing, but definitely not pulling it apart either. 5 up front and natural 5 in the shoulder, for me anyway. We actually had a flyer here, another one. You've got one down here and you've got one just high of the group, but one actually, if you watch the footage back, it hits the frame. We do fast forward it, but hopefully you might even be able to hear it in the video or see the footage that hopefully the target wobbled a bit. We hit the frame. So this one, it started getting a little bit worse when we evened it up front. The next one, we had 2 groups on the go. Quite nice groups actually, pretty tight, but we did have 2 groups. Now my reasoning behind that, we'll talk about the next group before I go into that. We've got the final group here, this is 10 and 10. So here we had 10 in the shoulder, 5 up front. This is 10 and 10, so I'm really gripping into this thing and pulling it towards me. Now, oh, I've just lost one of my lapel mics. There we go. Put that back on. Right, hopefully you can still hear me okay. We're back in business. Yeah, the reason I think behind this is because if you grip this thing tighter, you're more of a victim to the recoil. It's sort of like the same as when we artillery hold. With that, whereas the gun was flipping up, but where it was in the shoulder, it was keeping it reasonably still at the rear end. With this, you had the opposite sort of thing happening, and with this, where you grip it and rip it, you're really almost you're not pulling with the recoil. It's hard to put into words, but you'll know it when you shoot it yourself. You're firing and you're physically, where you're grabbing that thing so hard, you are dragging that thing around and you're throwing it with the recoil, if that makes sense. It definitely did not help our groups at all. Now, the thing that I take from this is gripping a gun as light as a feather, like a lot of us might have heard. And again, this does not go for all guns. I have to keep saying that. I know you're bored of me maybe saying this now, but with this particular gun, every gun is different, your mileage may vary, but with this particular gun, the saying grip it as lightly as possible doesn't really work. You can't do that. We tried that, it went all over the place, as you can see right here. Instead, you do have to bring it into the shoulder just a little bit, and I find that with the testing we did today, putting the leading hand, if you do wrap it around the stock, only gently, like I said, this is a 1 up front, 5 in the back, it groups so much better. You could not only hold the rifle more stable, keep it more still, for me at least, but on top of that, it does definitely, it works well with the recoil, I'll put it that way. Gripping it and ripping it, maybe with some guns it works. Today, no, no chance. But yeah, that's pretty much our results for today. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a little bit of an interesting test I thought we'd do. What I will say, whilst we're all sort of quarantined, or at least I hope you are, I know some people can't help but go outside, but please, if you can, keep yourself indoors as much as you can. It's the way we're really going to kill this thing quicker. And on top of that, obviously we want to help the NHS and the health services around the world. They need to be helped out as much as they can to hopefully beat this bastarding virus. So what I will say, maybe do some experiments on your own in the back garden. Obviously make sure you got a safe backstop. It doesn't matter the range. I mean, we're only shooting 25 here, and you can definitely see some really drastic differences. If you want something to help keep you a little bit sane, do some testing yourself, but instead of what I've had to do here, be more thorough with it. Don't just go up in like increments of 5 when it comes to like the tightness, what we was testing. Go finer with it. You'll know, you'll come up with your own point system as you're doing it. So instead, try a 5 in the back and a 3 up front. Could be quite good. So a little bit of grip, but not too much. Have a play, see which grips you come up with and see which you have the best results with, because you might actually surprise yourself as to what works best with your gun. You might actually find a hold that is far better than what you're currently using, even if that does mean going against the much vaunted artillery hold. I'll put it that way. Try it, you might surprise yourself. Anyways, thanks ever so much for watching, everyone. It's only hopefully short-ish and sweet review, this one. As always, we are currently on lockdown, so I'm afraid we can't deal with air guns at the moment. I know I'm pulling my hair out as much as you guys are locked up at home, but we are starting to crack down on some of the emails. We've got quite a few of them, but we are going to answer every single one. Thanks ever so much for watching. Any questions at all, leave them in the comments down below. Next up, we might do another sort of silly video, or we might actually review perhaps a Walther Rotex. So we'll see what's going on. Well, you'll find out soon enough. I'll put it that way. I've got too much time on my hands these days. But no, thanks ever so much for watching, everyone, and all the best, and look after yourself.